Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started in just a brief second here. We're going to give it just a moment to allow people to join from the virtual lobby, and then we will get started. Thank you all for joining us today. All right, hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Stop Guessing, Start Deciding. Redefine your SAP planning with Agentic AI, sponsored by DataRobot. I'm Sean Byers from SAP Insider, and I have a couple of quick announcements before we begin. This session is being recorded, and a copy of today's recording will be emailed to you following the session. If you are joining us live, the webinar is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. So we invite you to submit your questions using the Q&A text box at the bottom of your screen. After the presentation, we'll answer as many questions as time allows. Joining me today is Tomas Bonfim, Senior Marketing Manager, to introduce our panel. Over to you, Tomas.
All right. Thank you for the intro, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Bonfim, Senior Marketing Manager here at DataRobot, and I'm really excited to have you all here with us today. While I introduce our speakers and the topic we'll be covering, I have a quick question for you all. Please go ahead and drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'm joining you from Ontario, Canada. I'm really curious to understand where you're joining. In today's session, we will explore how Agentic AI can transform SAP planning, making it more efficient, accurate, and agile through DataRobot's SAP-endorsed AI apps and platform. We'll also talk about some of the most common roadblocks organizations face, like fragmented data, trust in AI forecast, and the shift from manual planning to a more strategic AI-assisted role. So you can see not just what's possible, but also how to start making that shift today. As Sean mentioned, we want this to be really interactive, so please submit your questions anytime. We'll save a few minutes at the end of the session to go over those questions. And as he also mentioned, you will be receiving the recording afterward. Now I'm delighted to introduce our speakers. We have three amazing speakers here aligned with us. First one is Hari Ashwini. He is the Vice President of Product Strategy here at DataRobot. He focuses on integrating AI into SAP to transform enterprise planning. He actually worked at SAP for over 15 years, so we bring a lot of knowledge on SAP. We also have Katrin Chang, Senior Director of Product Marketing for SAP Data and Analytics at SAP. And finally, at last but not least, Anthony Smith. He's a head of customer engineering at DataRobot. He works very closely with our customers at DataRobot to design AI-driven planning solutions. Let's cover what we will focus on today. If you move to the next slide, we'll start with a brief presentation on AI for SAP planning for about 10 minutes. Then we'll show a live demo so you can see the solution in action. And then we will kick off a 20-minute fireside chat with all of our speakers to share insights and real-world experiences. Then, as I mentioned, we'll close off with 10 minutes to answer your questions. So please, again, make sure to send in all the questions throughout the session. We'll answer at the end. With that, let's get started. I'll hand it over to Harry to kick things off with our first topic, AI for SAP planning. Harry, take it away.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining. So before I get right into the topic, for those of you who may not know of DataRobot, here's a quick slide that talks about who we are and some of the areas that we cover, the industries, and some of our key reference customers. So we have been in the business for over 10 years, and through the course of time, we have primarily revolutionized a big part of machine learning, and now we're getting pretty heavily into agentic and generative AI. So that's kind of a little bit of a history of the company. We have several patents. Some of the world's best data scientists, AI practitioners work for us. And as you can see here, some of the top companies in the world are actually using much of DataRobot's AI capabilities. So that's a little bit about the company. What is not mentioned here is this year we also made it to the leaders section in Gartner's Magic Quadrant. So that is another accomplishment to celebrate. Now, let me talk real quickly about the kind of the platform and the product before we get specifically into planning and how our apps work. At the very bottom, you see here that there is the end-to-end agentic platform. Now, this platform essentially is built on our traditional strengths in machine learning, and over time we have added a lot of capabilities around agentic workflows and also generative AI capabilities. So it helps you not only build, but also govern the agents, monitor the agents, and deploy, et cetera. So it's an end-to-end agentic platform for you to orchestrate the entire workflow. On top of this agentic platform, we offer three pre-canned capabilities. One is a set of foundational agents. These are agents, simple agents that you would need for any purpose, such as, talk to my data, talk to my docs, talk to my videos, some of the things that you can do. The second set is the business agents for SAP. These are pre-canned and highly customizable applications that we've actually built specifically on top of SAP and on top of SAP data with a lot of tight integration. And we'll spend time talking about that, and we'll show you a demo. Now, the purpose-built agents, think of them as a combination of the first two. So whenever we talk to a customer, usually they like the preset templates and they're able to get value out of it, but oftentimes because of customizations or whatever internal needs that they have, there is need for purpose-built agents. And these agents can be kind of constructed very quickly. And to kind of deliver all of this, we have some of the world's best solution engineers, data scientists, AI translators who can come and actually help you build and deploy these agents and actually give you an end-to-end experience. Now, just a real quick about how you can kind of think about DataRobot as a company and what we do. At the bottom, you see the infrastructure layer. We obviously support all the top hyperscalers. Given the focus on generative AI, we've also started supporting some of the neo clouds that you see, the GPU clouds here, like CoreWeave, Lambda, et cetera. And we are also heavy on-premise because a lot of our customers require it. And now with the advent of sovereign cloud, we are seeing quite a bit of demand for the on-prem side. On the LLM tool support, obviously we support OpenAI, Cohere, Gemini, Anthropic, et cetera, and also support AI tools like Langflow. Those are all pre-integrated into the application itself, and you can pick and choose either one or two of these components, and then or many as many as you want, and you can run them in parallel. So on top of that is actually where our platform sits, which has the apps layer, but also gives you the opportunity to develop your own AI applications, agentic applications or agents, and not only develop them, but you can deploy and govern and you monitor them, essentially looking for toxicity. Is it saying the right things? How can it be further optimized? Is it degrading? Can it be upgraded? A lot of the platform components are available for you. And supporting all of that is our partners. Obviously, SAP is a big partner of ours, but we also support other application providers. And we have a set of global system integrators who can also work with you to your needs. Now, given that setup, let me move quickly to how can we think about all the capabilities that DataRobot has around AI, agentic AI, and machine learning specifically, and all the work we have done around data, and apply it to your business process. The way I'd like to set up this thing is we are here to redefine planning. And planning is something that is done in every part of an organization, as you see here, whether it's finance, supply chain, manufacturing, customer experience, and even HR, there's workforce planning, for instance. So planning is ubiquitous in the organization. And there are already lots of planning homegrown tools that are there. There are tools from software providers that are out there. And we see an opportunity to really reimagine and refresh the whole planning area with the combination of our strengths in machine learning and what we have created with agentic AI. So here you see, this is a a traditional planning application. Many of you may have seen it, or maybe you are able to relate to it. This is I jokingly call it the planning applications of the past. So essentially, these systems were designed for data scientists. They are very, very good, but they're very complex. And only people with a lot of training can use them, can understand them, can manipulate them. The learning curves are quite hard. Now, when we think about the business user coming and saying, look, I want to kind of have dials to the plan and I want to make changes to it, they have to go back to a data scientist to have that done. And obviously, that's a very time-consuming process. What we also found in conversations with a lot of our customers who've been using us for a long time is planning systems are often siloed. Even within supply chain, there could be like 13 to 20 different areas for planning. And there is really no way for them to kind of connect the plans and collaborate on the plans. And we believe that our system allows to do that. Now, the last one that is really, really important is the responsiveness to business. When a plan is first created, it's created based on certain assumptions that are accurate for that period of time. But as the business changes and evolves, the plans need to be changed. So to that, our system, the DataRobot system, is so easy where the business user or the expert can actually quickly interact with the plan and make changes quite easily without having to depend on the data scientist team. So to kind of sum it all up, and there's a demo here that you'll be able to see when you get the slides, but we'll also show you a live demo. But in short, what we are bringing to the table is an end-to-end agentic experience for the planner, specifically for the business planner. The second thing we are doing is we are actually, given the history of 10 years in machine learning, and given that we have invented AutoML, our forecasts will always be better because they are always created on the fly versus something that is pre-canned in the system. So that is a key differentiator where every time you run our models, they will tend to have a higher levels of accuracy, even sometimes up to 40 to 60%, because they are always created on the fly. So there is no preset algorithm. The system runs through hundreds of different algorithms based on your data set, and then it creates the forecast. The last one that's really important is self-adapting. Here, and we'll go through all this in detail, and Anthony will talk about this. This is really a key point because just like LLMs degrade over time, forecasts can also degrade. But oftentimes, you don't know when they've degraded. So what we have done is we have built it in a way to say it kind of spot checks itself and says, oh, am I saying the right things? Am I showing the right forecast? And if it has got any kind of issues, it'll actually flag the need to make the change. A quick note about SAP. We are one of their endorsed SAP partners. They're one of our top partnerships for DataRobot. Through the endorsed program, we have fully certified the entire agentic workforce platform, the application itself, so you can build apps on top of SAP. But we also deliver a set of preset agentic AI applications for specific areas in supply chain and finance that we'll speak to. And all of that comes with hardened integration to some of the core SAP data sources that you may see here. Many of you may be using S/4HANA, you may be using BW, you may be using a DataSphere, you may be using data from Ariba, SuccessFactors. We are effectively able to digest all of the data through our efforts with SAP and then create agentic applications on top. Okay, with that said, let me turn it over to Anthony Smith for a quick deep dive on the product and also show you a quick demo. Anthony?
Thanks, Harry. If you just jump to the next slide, please. So I think you've touched upon some of these already in the earlier slides, but it's worth pointing out just a few points before we go into the demo. And then the demo can reinforce a few more of these things as well. The first thing is that we are both a technical platform, so we're very powerful from a pro code perspective, but we also need to make sure that we're empowering business users. And so we're thinking about that from so many different angles. One is how the agentic capabilities can enable this natural language interactions and make sure you can get expert in the loop as you start to manage your conversations and you ask to refine certain requests. The forecasts that Hari mentioned, that is a super strong point of the platform. We have a huge number of open source algorithms as well as our own proprietary algorithms that allow you to get very, very high levels of accuracy. But we have a number of other machine learning algorithms as well, and we can support any of the other LLMs in there to be able to do combined solutions that can look at anomaly detection or Gen AI use cases or pure ML use cases as well at the same time. And the last point there is very much around what's commonly spoken about as ML ops. So a lot of solutions might develop a model to start off with, and then perhaps that gets stale. What we have with the ML ops, and we'll touch on that briefly with the demo, is that we very, very closely manage the accuracy over time. We can set up alerts, we can provide the visibility, so that once you've developed these models, and particularly as you get much higher in your scale, you're able to understand when you're starting to deviate if your accuracy is dropping from perhaps the model you built before. And that's super important for being able to maintain the optimal levels over time. Next slide, please. One of the things that we've always done with customers is we've worked across both SAP and non-SAP scenarios, and we've done almost any use case you can imagine. But some of these use cases are ones that are worth leaning into more with SAP. And so part of the role of my team is to make sure that we can dig deeper into some of these specific use cases that we see coming up a lot and try to get to the point where we can accelerate these as much as possible by building.
Did we lose Anthony?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So these application kits are there to accelerate the implementations. They are able to get you 80 to 9% of the way there and still allow you to configure it to bring in your own customizations. So a lot of these are on the truck already. We've got cash flow forecasting, demand planning, revenue forecasting, materials planning, delivery planning. They're all available now. And of course, we're continuing to work on these in the areas where we're seeing demand. Next slide, Harry. Now, for the demo today, we're going to be covering a lot of ground in under 10 minutes. So don't worry if it feels a little bit quick. We can definitely deeper dive if you want into anything that you see in a dedicated session afterwards. So just get in contact with us afterwards, and hopefully something strikes a bit of interest and we can understand what it means for you. Now, we're going to touch on leveraging DataRobot to improve demand forecast in IBP. We're going to look at a couple of examples of revenue forecasting and predicting delivery lead times using S/4HANA, DataSphere, and SAC. And we're also going to have a sneak peek into the possibilities with some of the agentic capabilities within the platform. Now, one thing to take away is that DataRobot provides these advanced AI capabilities, and that includes machine learning, generative AI, agentic AI, and it provides it in a way that you can enhance the value that you're already getting with SAP without having to disrupt the workflows that you're used to. So we're going to start with IBP, which, as you know, provides a strong foundation for planners, but often there's opportunities still to enhance the forecast to ensure that you're getting the highest levels of accuracy. So Hari, if you don't mind allowing me to take over the screen share.
Right there.
Okay. So those of you who are familiar with this tool should recognize the web UIs or perhaps the Excel interface that we're looking at here. What we're seeing is a very simple view. So we've got a weekly time frame at the granularity of the product in the store. We can see that we've got our actual sales along with another key figure showing the DataRobot external forecast. So note that that is simply another key figure. So you can treat that exactly the same as any other key figure. Into account in a more complicated scenario. But for this example, let's take a quick look behind the scenes. In this particular integration scenario, we're running the training and the predictions from DataRobot, and we can do that on a demand or on a schedule, but you can also configure it to run directly from IBP. One thing to bear in mind is that DataRobot has a huge amount of functionality that you can leverage, and you can choose to keep it as simple as you want or go much deeper. Here we're looking at the raw data extracted directly from SAP, and we're focusing on a limited set of features just for this example, but we can expand it to hundreds more. We can run an experiment that behind the scenes will run an automated process to evaluate hundreds of different algorithms and approaches to find the optimal model for your data. And I won't dig into this because this is an entire dedicated session, but this is actually a lot of the magic. What I will highlight is that the experiment has automatically created a lot more features. So you can see here, mainly it's derived purely from the actuals quantity. And so that gives different ways of looking at the historical values of actuals quantity over time, and that saves you a ton of work. There are also a lot of ways that we can obtain deep insights into what's important in determining the forecast values and the performance of the model. So at this point, we're starting to get into more sophisticated capabilities. So I'm just going to highlight one, which shows how important each feature is in determining the prediction. So we can see here that the product and location are clearly strong factors, but beyond that, there are a lot of historical values derived from the pattern of actuals that are having an influence. Now, going beyond building, you need to be able to deploy and trust the model. And DataRobot addresses this by delivering comprehensive model monitoring and governance. So we rigorously track usage, auditing, reliability, and we offer full transparency and safeguarding against the models that are potentially no longer performing. So we can see over time, we can look at things like data drift. So once you train the model, you can have a look at how you're using the model, and if the way that you're submitting data is different to how you've trained it, it could be an early indication to change things. And we can, of course, closely monitor accuracy over time to continuously keep track of performance. So we can easily detect if a model isn't working well, and we can take actions to fix it. And that could be replacing it with a challenger model that's been running in parallel the whole time, so we can swap them out. But when we return to IBP, we can see the results of the job we kicked off. And if we refresh the data, then we now can see the forecast values appearing for the next 12 weeks. So as a business user, this is all you will see. Once you come to your monthly forecast, your weekly forecast, you will get the values and all of the magic happens in the background. So we can look at a couple of other examples. Here we have an SAC dashboard showing the final output from a few revenue forecasting models we've created. We're loading data from HANA through DataSphere. We've built the predictions, written them back into DataSphere, and we're integrating them into an SAC dashboard. So the one you're seeing here is specifically showing some forecasts at 1, 3, 6, and 12-month timeframes. And sometimes it makes sense to optimize for these particular timeframes to get the best results. We can also easily configure the forecast to work at different levels. So here we're looking at it from a customer level, but it could easily be pivoted to look at something like a product level or an organization level, depending on what you need. So to provide another example, what if you wanted to get a forward-looking dashboard to look at your outgoing deliveries? So just like with revenue forecasting, it's the same pattern. We're building the model, we're putting the data back in DataSphere and seeing that in SAC. And if we revisit DataRobot for this particular use case, then what we'll see is that the important features for determining if a shipment will be late include things like the shipping point, the transportation route, the size of the order, the plant, and there's a long list of other contributing factors that are there. And we can dig into more detail for any of these, and we can see the individual values that impact the prediction. Here we're looking at how much variation there is depending on the shipping route. We can also take a look at the explanations for any given individual prediction. And so we can see which features are increasing or decreasing the likelihood of a delay, as well as by how much. So in this case, the item category dominates the reason why it predicts it'll be late, but we can click into it and we can get more details to see the larger list. And then on the other end of the scale, we can look at another prediction where there are a mix of positive and negative factors that are considered when ultimately determining the prediction. Okay, so looking at it from a different perspective, up until now, we've seen how we can incorporate advanced AI in the form of machine learning directly in SAP tools. But the planning lifecycle often involves a lot of different steps. So it's useful to think about how we can improve the experience end-to-end by incorporating agentic workflows. So I'm going to show a few snippets of our vision demo, which is something we use for inspiration. Ultimately, what we build for customers may look different because we tend to build it for the solution specifics. Now, let's say we wanted to ask the agent to do a current to previous forecast comparison. So here the agent has retrieved both of them, joined them together on the overlapping timeframes, and it's plotted them on a new visualization. Perhaps we want to be able to leverage a previous forecast and come up with some what-if scenarios to see the impact. And here what we're doing is we're instructing the agent to build a new data set, representing a promotional uplift in April and a higher level of customer contracts in June. Now, we can ask it to produce an executive summary of what it did. We're seeing that on the left. We can see we've got an Easter promotional impact and a few other changes that have been in there with a summary. We've got the visualizations that have been created. And over time, what we can see is that as we build up more and more of these analyses can then be made available to the agent to then build upon as well. So as we start to investigate more and more, then over time, we can start to see that there might be a chain of data sets or a chain of analyses that the agent has used, and we can get full visibility of what's happening behind the scenes. So that is our super quick demo. Like I said before, if there's anything you'd like to dig into deeper, please get in contact and we can have a dedicated session.
Awesome. Anthony, that was fantastic. If I can ask you and Kat to please turn on your cameras, we can actually get to some discussion around. So I want to say, what you showed was all about the data and how to take the data and then tie it back and make it agentic. Just fantastic. Really loved the product. So Kat, I want to kind of start with you first. Obviously, we have built all these great technologies in SAP and DataRobot and the partnership. As you engage with customers, I know you talked to a lot of them. What do you see are some of the biggest inhibitors, if you may, in your mind? Let's talk about the challenges to a data-driven decision making with respect to planning and analysis functions today.
Yeah, definitely. Great question, right? We have spoken with a lot of customers over the years, and data still remains one of the biggest topics. And I see that as the biggest inhibitor as well, or more specifically, like the quality of data, right? Companies nowadays, they have tons of data sitting in data lakes. And we've been saying for a long time now, like data is the new oil, right? The new gold. But now when they actually have to do something with it, that's where the challenge lies. So it's still fragmented across different systems and applications, making that preparation really complex and challenging to bring it together in a way that's ready for planning, let alone AI. So it's also really tough to make that strategic decisions when you only see part of the picture. And that's really common. You already mentioned earlier, Hari, in your presentation, like silos. When you make decisions in silos, you don't know if a decision in finance affects something in sales and supply chain later on. So having that full picture, that holistic view of the business is so crucial in planning and just decision making in general. If you're making, decisions that'll drive and steer your company in the future. Companies learned this really the hard way during the pandemic when siloed decisions really led to those brittle supply chains and inaccurate demand forecasts and those workforce disruptions, right? It's not only about bringing that departmental data together as well. Like to get a full picture, planners often need third-party data as well, like commodity prices, credit risk ratings, economic signals. Like there's so many things that planners actually need to bring together to strengthen their forecast and decision making. SAP is addressing these very specifically through something we launched earlier this year called Business Data Cloud. With Business Data Cloud, you're really building that business data fabric, that data foundation that can bring SAP data and non-SAP data together and fuel planning, analytics, and AI, right? And also through features like seamless planning and analytics cloud that enhances the way data is stored and managed for planning models. So that's really my point of view there.
Awesome. I mean, and we are huge fans of Business Data Cloud. I should have mentioned this earlier, but DataRobot specifically is integrated pretty heavily to Business Data Cloud, and we'll be releasing intelligent applications on top of Business Data Cloud. So thank you very much, Kat. Anthony, same question to you. Dia, what are you seeing from your discussions with customers?
Yeah, I think, Kat, obviously data would have been number one almost for me. I think my angle on it is probably more about machine learning models, and we are nothing without the data to start off with. So when we're talking about those ML models, I think the main thing is just trust. If we take a particular example for forecasting, we see a lot of the time that these forecasts get created and they don't really get acted on, or nobody pays attention to them. And I think sometimes it's because of a lack of accuracy. Maybe it's producing these numbers and nobody knows why it's producing them. So over time, people just don't trust it. So being able to have an understanding of what happens under the hood is really important, and being able to experiment and understand how things change when you look at different angles is super important. So I think that's part of the reason when we've developed our platform, our focus has always been on not just creating the highly accurate models, but like opening up the black box and making sure that when you're building these models, you're understanding what are the drivers behind it, what are the things that matter. Sometimes it might, be the obvious things, and that's great. And sometimes it might be things that you haven't really thought about, or sometimes it could be just a subtle combination of everything. So I think that's super important.
Perfect. I guess the next question I have, or the next thought I have is, this is all about SAP and SAP, serving SAP's install base, SAP's customers who've invested very heavily in building out their SAP landscapes and fine tuning it and making their businesses essentially run on SAP. So, Kat, first question to you. Now we're seeing this big AI movement that's coming into all areas in the company, whether line of business, manufacturing, supply chain, it's coming everywhere. So as customers are looking at AI, what should they have in mind? What are some of the challenges, considerations, et cetera, as they think about AI in the context of SAP?
Yeah, definitely. I would have to say, again, it comes down to the data, right? So you're right. We have SAP customers with really large SAP landscapes. They've got data in different applications. And again, it's also not just SAP landscapes, of course. They also have a lot of data trapped in their third-party applications as well. So it's pretty much spread across and kind of fragmented there. So it becomes even more critical to have high quality data when you bring AI into the picture, especially for planning. So when it comes to where the focus, where the challenges are, again, it kind of comes to the data, right? Many companies still extract data out of their SAP systems, rebuilding it elsewhere. That creates some fragmented context and issues with data quality. The semantics and the context, as you guys know, very important to AI. And so if you can't trust your data, then your AI outcomes can't be trusted either. Again, why we launched Business Data Cloud, which actually includes Analytics Cloud for planning, right? It delivers that live access to the trusted SAP data across your SAP landscape, including also the third-party data. So you can feed that into analytics, planning, and AI without having to move any of that data around. So,
actually, I'll follow up on that question, on that point. But Anthony, I will let you go next.
Yeah, I think that SAP obviously has a lot of really good options for planning within the SAP ecosystem. And for a lot of customers, that's perfectly good for their needs. There are going to be some scenarios where perhaps a dedicated AI platform like DataRobot might be able to offer some additional value there. And I think the key thing here, the hardest step here is just making sure that, like you said, Kat, you're not creating another silo. So wherever possible, you're ingesting the data, you're getting the intelligence out of that, you're processing it, and you're putting it back into the same ecosystem that it came from, so that you're able to blend these advanced capabilities, but make sure that you're not creating two different systems that you need to look at. You're still following the same workflows.
So just to follow up on that, like let's take a specific line of business, for instance, let's take finance or let's take supply chain, Anthony, and this question is for you. They already have financial planning applications from SAP. Kat mentioned there is integrated business planning for supply chain. There are planning applications there. What is the value that DataRobot provides on top? How are we augmenting what SAP has already delivered and what the customers have already deployed?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned before, there are good capabilities to do some of these functions within some parts of the platform. There might be, for example, a search for the ultimate in accuracy, or we're looking at a huge scalability, or this need to get deep into experimentation and deep into insights. And it's those kinds of things. I think you got a bit of a teaser of it in the demo, but it's those kind of things that we've been doing this for 12 or 13 years now, and it's the only thing that we do. So the depth that we can go into can actually be super important for use cases where you really need to push the boundaries like that and get the best results possible.
So I think that's a good segue to kind of talk about some of our agentic kits. Obviously, we released agentic kits for SAP, specifically for use cases around supply chain and finance that Anthony talked about earlier. So in terms of ROI, thinking about reinventing planning and bringing agentic planning and AI into planning, what are you seeing? And maybe Anthony, you have a perspective on this on the ROI side for customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously do a lot of different types of machine learning models, some of which are forecasting, some of which are not. But forecasting is such a fundamental component within an organization, and there are many different ways of doing it, whether it's demand planning or revenue forecasting. And I think with those processes, it's very clear to be able to show the improvements upon that, and the benefits of making incremental changes can be quite huge. So yes, there are ways in which we are developing improved results in some areas, but when we're also extending those out to be more agentic, we start to look for things like, well, how can we actually help us understand what's happening? So rather than having to do manual comparisons, or rather than trying to really dig deep and find out some of these summaries, how do we make that process easier? And some of that might be automation, some of that might be just being almost your partner in crime there, kind of pointing things out that you might have missed. And I think that's the really exciting part of the agentic capabilities that are coming out. And no doubt they're super fast and they're changing so quickly. But even where they are right now, there's so much to offer in terms of that.
I mean, it's such an exciting time, right? We have so much technology, and it's redefining how we're all doing things. Now, Kat, I mean, thinking about this more from a financial planner, a supply chain planner, somebody in the LOB, obviously there's a lot of excitement on what can be done. But there's also, it's kind of sort of overwhelming. Where do you start? Where do you finish? What is a day 1 plan versus day 30 plan versus day 60? People are thinking through all of these things. And what is like one piece of practical advice that you would give to a business leader as they're considering bringing in planning, agentic planning?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but it is also to focus on the data before jumping into bigger, more complex AI planning use cases, right? We have spoken with customers before that do try to go really big at first, and then find out that their data quality isn't quite where it needs to be, because you have one pilot and the results end up kind of poor, not trustworthy, and then it stalls you in AI and advancement for quite a while, right? So that's why we always advise customers, and I'm sure it's the same for DataRobot as well. You advise them to have a pretty solid data foundation that'll help you scale your AI efforts and give you like AI results that you can really trust, and your planners can trust, more importantly. These planners probably have years of experience in this, and it's already kind of something that is maybe uncomfortable for some of them. So that trust factor is really important to get correct the first time. So
I do want to double click on that trust factor and working with AI. So actually, that's actually a good segue to my next question. But then before that, Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think particularly over the last few years, I've worked with a lot of customers in implementing these AI systems, and one of the hardest parts is just adapting to change. So it's one of those things where you have to address it head on. You have to know that it's coming and have a real plan for the impact that it's going to have on the people. And the way you introduce it, I think, is little by little. So start with maybe one of your high level forecasts, the ones that are going to make the biggest differences, but also the ones you've probably already got your data in the right format. And then make sure you can bring that through the process, keep a human in the loop, start to bring them on board with all of the additional things that you can get, the insights, the additional accuracy, any small changes you might need to get in place in terms of processes, do them, build your trust, and then show those benefits without having to significantly disrupt things, so you can get those wins on the board. And at that point, then you can start to think about taking on things that are a little bit more complex or a little bit more out there and start to experiment with a bit. But it's important to get that first win on the board.
So as you think about bringing the AI-powered planning and the impact of culture and how that kind of brings in the human in the loop and all these things. So maybe Kat, you have some perspective on that in terms of like the cultural aspect. How would you think about advising customers to prepare for the shift as more and more AI is coming in, and we're hearing all this news around AI displacing jobs and all of that crazy stuff, which I don't think is necessarily going to happen. But what is your perspective on that?
yeah, I actually really love what Anthony just said, right? The people. I would say that there is so much focus on the technology that the people aspect is pretty much underestimated sometimes. So I would say change management is very important. And this spans across planning and other areas of the business as well when we start introducing AI. Like you mentioned, Hari, that fear of AI taking over your job is actually pretty real, right? And so we need to shift the thinking to AI being our assistants. It's going to help us be better in our jobs. It's not going to take over our jobs. And so that change management is so important. So do a lot of enablement, open that black box, like Anthony mentioned earlier, foster those AI champions, make everyone feel comfortable with using AI. And again, shift that mindset from AI taking over jobs to I've got an AI assistant that can do, that can help me be so much faster and more efficient. So that's what I would say.
Really well said. So no conversation on the technology side can be had without, hey, what happens 3 to 5 years from now? What's the future look like? So I think there's a lot of content out there around how AI is going to evolve and then bring more value. And I think this content constantly, but I want to bring it back to the role of the planner. As you think about the role of the planner, as companies are doing planning all over, how do you see, you already said it's not a replace, it's going to be more, augmentative to their work, but how do you see that evolving in 3 to 5 years from now? Like, where do you see that going? Kat, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, I see planners as so critical to a company's ability to run smoothly. I mean, they're responsible for the budgets and all the forward kind of planning it takes to make sure operations runs smoothly, like I said. So I don't believe AI will ever completely replace planners. Instead, I think AI is going to help evolve that role into becoming more strategic. AI is going to help them save a lot of time by performing all the tedious, time-consuming manual tasks like co-pilots like Joule we have in Analytics Cloud today, fast-track planning process by automating report creation, data analysis, managing spreadsheets, inputting numbers. A lot of that can be automated. And so that frees up some time for the planner to start thinking more strategically. Like we talked about earlier, getting that holistic view across the business, making decisions not in silos, but ensuring that you're connected from finance, sales, HR to supply chain and procurement. So one decision doesn't impact another department down the road, right? So throughout all this, the planner remains like the backbone of business performance. And I mentioned this earlier, AI becomes that trusted assistant to really fast track a lot of this and tie everything together and help make those accurate data-driven decisions that you would be very difficult to do without AI, to be honest.
Fantastic. Well said. Anthony?
Yeah, look, I think you captured it perfectly. It's not going to replace planners. I think it's going to upgrade them. And I think it's one of these things you need to embrace, because actually what it's going to do is it's going to take away a lot of the mundane aspects of what you're doing. And it's going to elevate what you're doing to, a lot of the stuff we don't want to do on a day-to-day basis, but we have to do that. The good stuff is in the strategic thinking. So it's more about potentially, what are the things that I actually really want to test, or what are the things I should be aware of, or like these high level thoughts could now become reality, whereas before you might have been stuck in a spreadsheet and trying to compare all these numbers. So I think it's very much around, augmenting planners to become super planners.
Yep. So Anthony, this is the last question, actually is a more topic for you. You spend a lot of time with DataRobot's customers. Now, as the SAP install base is considering, or they looking at the transformation of planning itself with Agentic AI, what is like the one actionable thing that you would ask them to think about or take as they start the journey? Other than calling you, which what else can they do?
I think that's probably my point. Maybe not me, but call DataRobot. And I think every environment's very complex. Like particularly if you're using SAP, right? This is something you've embedded in your work, your ecosystem for a very long time, and your business is completely dependent on it. So maybe you've got different products, you've got different challenges. Some parts you might be doing well, other parts you're not doing so well. You might be at a different stage in your AI journey compared to another company. So it's very difficult to say like, here's the one thing you should do.
Right.
But the one thing you should do is actually get in contact with us. And so whether it's us, whether it's SAP, we work together to be able to try to understand where are you in your specific circumstances, and what do we think would be the right first step, and how do we define a roadmap together so that we can build up from those early wins and then continue to scale that throughout the organization.
That's one thing that I've seen consistently as well is, sometimes people will jump in and they will start somewhere without considering the 30-day problem, the 60-day problem. I think in working with DataRobot and SAP, you'll see that we have the entire end-to-end, what happens in day 1, what happens at day 30, what happens day 60, and we have a plan for that. Okay. Thank you, Kat and Anthony. I think we should now turn it on to questions from the audience. Sean, would that be through you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Great discussion, wonderful demo. To our audience, just as a quick reminder, we encourage you to submit any questions that you have by typing your questions into the Q&A chat box. We will answer as many questions as time allows. There are a couple of questions here. One here that says, what you've told us today sounds great, but I'd like to know how it works in the real world. Do you have an example of a customer whose DataRobot SAP models have been running in production for a while? And what have you built for them?
Yes, question for Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we can't name customers in there, but we've certainly got some of the largest customers in the world that are doing things like predicting the delivery timeframes for some of their complex logistics operations throughout the world. We've got companies that are predicting and interacting with their forecasts from a conversational point of view. And of course, these things are always evolving, but there's a lot of combinations of different solutions that we use. And I think it's really dependent on the organization itself. So sometimes it might be being able to talk to your documents. So bringing about a knowledge base and then incorporating the ability to talk to some of your structured data as well from maybe your financial statements. So these are things that right now it's incredibly an exciting area to be in. So we build off that strong data foundation and the capabilities that are in there, and we start pushing the boundaries. So
one thing to add to that, if I may, Sean, is
Sure.
we have I think 1/3 of our install base is SAP. So we have a huge overlap in the install base. Pretty much 1/3 they all use SAP. So the models have been running for tens of years. But what I'm seeing in conversations with customers is interesting is they're like, hey, I got all this thing I'm doing with SAP, but now I want to do price forecasting based on data from commodity indices, which is not necessarily something SAP does. It's an index, it comes from somewhere. So what we're able to do is essentially bring the model that we have today with SAP and then add additional data from commodity indices to say, okay, these are the predictions when it comes to pricing. And then we're able to give that to the business user, to the marketing teams who are actually doing pricing, and they can interact with it in a very simple way to say, okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? How does the price need to change if my data changes? So we've had some very interesting custom use cases that have kind of evolved from our existing install base of SAP accounts.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Another question that we have here, we already do our planning in SAP. What's the main thing DataRobot gives us in terms of more accurate forecasts or smarter decisions that we just can't get using the standard features in SAP today?
yeah, and I think this will depend on exactly what process is currently being used in SAP right now. And it could be that actually what you've got right now is perfectly good up to a certain point. And then there is a threshold that you cross, and that could be different for different customers, where you want to be able to say, I really want to take the machine learning model out or the agentic workflow and run it as like a first-class citizen. So that means I want to get the greatest control, the greatest capability and the greatest monitoring, and work all that, but still do it in a way that it works with SAP. So that's our constant focus. That's my entire team's focus, is to make sure how we can build these solutions in a way that is actually unified with SAP.
Yeah, and if I can add to that too, Anthony, it's like we, again, spoken with a lot of customers. With SAP, our strategy is really embedded AI, right? Really, to your point, making sure it's in workflows. It's not disruptive, which is also really important, because obviously, if you're going to introduce new technology into your planning cycle, you're going to impact your planning cycle, and that's not a good thing. So managing disruption is also very important. And so we do try to embed AI, embedded forecasting, for example, Analytics Cloud. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, can we open that black box up and tweak it a little bit? Can I tailor it? Can I add some scripting? I'm like, sorry guys, we allow certain levels of variables, parameters, and of course, to customize it. But there's, like Anthony said, there comes a point where you really need to look at an AI solution that's more tailored to your business. And we've seen all sorts of businesses. They all have their own kind of requirements and their own planning cycles. And yeah, so lots of different things to consider there. So totally agree with your point there.
Excellent, excellent. And Hari, did you also want to chime in there as well?
I think they both covered it beautifully. That's what I would have said, 100%.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we have time for maybe one more question here. And I think this sounds like a kind of a good one to end on as well. But what is in the roadmap for DataRobot and SAP in the future?
So I can kind of like talk about it more on the business sense. So with SAP, we want to continue the innovation. We want to continue the focus on expanding the integration with the business data cloud side and all the different products and portfolios that come with it. We want to strengthen it. We want to enhance it. We want to continue building on it. But at the same time, we work with, as I said, almost 1/3 of the install base that we have today in DataRobot is SAP accounts. So we are working very closely with our customers on a number of use cases and trying to figure out which one of these high value use cases that we should actually templatize. So our focus is to deliver more intelligent apps. We are starting with line of business functions, but we want to go to verticals. We want to touch like other lines of business that we are not focused on today. So really to take all the kind of the learnings and the best practices that we've had from customer engagements and turning them into products is what I would say. Anthony, you probably have more specific ideas on what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's quite exciting because we're working closely with some of the product teams in SAP and within SAC as well to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible and as integrated as possible. And also in areas like Joule, for example. So there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. You might want to be in Joule and you're already leveraging the capabilities within the SAP ecosystem, but there is a broader ecosystem out there of which, for example, DataRobot might be a part of it. And we want to make sure that that connection so that you can be running Joule and bringing in content from DataRobot is as seamless as possible. And also as Joule continues to evolve and we start to get the agents talking directly to each other, then we want to be able to say that if you're building a workflow in DataRobot, you've got agents in there that need SAP to read data or trigger something, then we can talk to Joule. And then Joule will be able to execute this within the context of the user and within the rules that are defined within SAP.
So this is the whole agent conversation. So I think that's very exciting. That's probably what is the next big technology thing that we'll be doing.
Yeah, it's exciting to see how this partnership has evolved too, right? You became partners with SAP 2023 and nonstop since then. And so many things have changed since then too. We went from just doing an AI platform now to templates and agentic AI, which is really how fast the AI topic is moving these days with technology. And I really wish companies would kind of put their foot forward and really dive into this area, because that'll make a big differentiator for successful business in the future. Really, the way things are going right now, going from kind of reacting to more predicting the future and adjusting and steering your company towards that. Having said that, you guys have already built many integrations with SAP across Analytics Cloud, DataSphere, HANA Cloud, IBP definitely. So very excited to see what's next in the future.
And thank you for your support, Kat. Appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you all. This really has been a wonderful discussion. That is all the time that we have for today. As a final reminder to the audience, this webinar will be available on sapinsider.org as a webinar on demand, and all registrants will receive a link via email. A special thank you to Hari, Katrin, and Anthony for joining us today. And on behalf of SAP Insider and DataRobot. Thank you to our audience for your time, and we hope that you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone.